Welcome to Protecting Your Legacy with Estate Planning.
Hello and welcome to Protecting Your Legacy with Estate Planning and Adam Grant. Adam is the founding attorney of the Stonewood Law Group PC in Encino, California. He helps families across Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, Ventura, and San Bernardino counties. They build clear, comprehensive plans that protect what matters and avoid probate. I'm Lisa Mosby, your host, and in today's episode, we're talking about fiduciaries, who they are, what they're responsible for, and why choosing the right ones matters just as much as the documents themselves. Adam, thank you so much for being with me today.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. We don't always understand what things mean. What does the term fiduciary mean in the context of an estate plan, and why is that role so important?
So a fiduciary is an elevated level of responsibility. Taking a step back, looking at the term, it means that you have beyond a reasonable duty to perform what you're expected to perform. So fiduciaries have this heightened level of performing services on behalf of someone. In the context of a will and trust, we look at professional fiduciaries who can stand in for a trust and be the trustee perhaps, but administer the trust faithfully on an independent, perhaps neutral basis. But also there may be familiar issues where you want someone who's more professional. We'll talk about the reasons when a professional fiduciary is more attuned and more ripe for the situation. But a fiduciary is there. It could be a bank, it could be a private individual who's licensed and certified, but they stand in to manage the trust, to essentially effectuate the instructions within the trust and make the requisite distributions.
So do they act in different roles within the trust?
They can act as different roles. You can have multiple fiduciaries. More often than not, if you do have a fiduciary, they stand on their own or they work with a family member. So that gives some professionalism to the trust and its administration. Perhaps it's a trust with a sensitive beneficiary or it's a large estate. You want someone who's neutral, who can stand in, objectively make decisions that the trust allows, and faithfully execute their duties so that there is someone they can trust in that role to follow the terms of the trust and have it faithfully executed.
And I think you may have answered this question, Adam, but why does the choice of fiduciary matter so much once someone can no longer make decisions for themselves? Why don't we use a family member all the time?
So family members are sometimes not the best person. They have conflicts of interest. They may be overly sensitive to what the beneficiary needs. They may not be as close with this person. So perhaps it's a family member and they live in another state or another part of the country. Having a trustee who's in state, who's available, who's boots on the ground. And again, this fiduciary can take a number of roles and can be put in trust in a number of different ways. And there's different trusts that this trustee can serve as. So for instance, we do something here at the firm called supplemental needs trusts or special needs trusts. It's something we focus on. Those trusts are very sensitive because the beneficiary who they are meant to take care of have very sensitive and strict rules to maintain their eligibility for those trusts. That's where a professional trustee can step in and make sure that the distributions to the trustee, or rather to the beneficiary, are permitted distributions. So they have that professionalism. If something comes back from a government agency and says that perhaps they're disqualified from a benefit or a service, that fiduciary has the know-how to respond to the agency and ensure that the supplemental needs trust maintains its character and maintains its adequacy so that the beneficiary can get what they're getting without disqualifying or making them ineligible for one of their benefits.
So if a client doesn't use a professional fiduciary, what responsibilities come with being named as a fiduciary if you're a family member or friend? What responsibilities would that person often not fully understand or appreciate when they agree to take on this role?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they don't agree to take on this role. Sometimes people are named in trust and they just become that. But with a professional fiduciary, it's less likely. That's because you've set this up with some forethought and talked to that person before you put them into your trust. But going back to the family member, a family member may not always be the right person. So when we want to have family there, they're great. They're personal, knowledgeable. They have that institutional knowledge of where the person needs to be cared for and how they get their best care. But again, they might not be close to the person, whether that's by relationship or proximity. They might not be able to offer the best care to that person. So there's a wide range of professional fiduciaries. And you can look at a bank, you can look at a private professional fiduciary. And those are people, sometimes family businesses, individuals who are certified and licensed, and they can pick up the pieces and serve as trustee with subsequent trustee longevity going into the future, but also having that contingency plan so that they're able to service the trust long into the future. And then the conversation really is, when you're assessing a fiduciary, there's combinations of the two.
So, Adam, under California law, what standards are fiduciaries expected to meet when managing finances, healthcare decisions, or trustee assets?
Mm-hmm. So they're supposed to meet a higher level of care, which means they are tasked with responsibilities not only prescribed by the probate code and the trust, but also ethical and moral responsibilities to offer that higher level of care. With that, they might not be attuned to carrying out this role. So again, if you have a family member, they're either surprised or they know that they are trustee and they now have these duties dropped on them. They might not be the right person to faithfully execute those duties, or they don't feel confident in meeting that higher fiduciary level. This is where you can consider these other options, people like a private fiduciary or a bank. And then again, there are options where it has a little bit of both best worlds. So you can pursue companies that do have advisory roles to banks. They take a portion from the bank and they can then administer the trust with the bank, and having that confidence that they have someone who's knowledgeable and boots on the ground.
I can see at times where somebody might be appointed and they didn't know about it, or they agreed to it and they didn't know what they were agreeing to, the full capacity of it. What tends to happen when a fiduciary misunderstands their role or treats it casually instead of as a legal obligation? Can they be replaced, or can they ask another professional for help to assist them?
That's a great question. So yes, they often get in these precarious places where they don't know how to administer the trust, and they can bring in help, but that's largely up to the terms of the trust. The trust will provide with who, how, and in what event they can bring on a co-trustee. Perhaps they just bring on an advisor, and it allows for both of those situations. But they don't often know or understand the gravity of the responsibilities that are put on a trustee. So if it's just a person who encounters these roles, they may not know, for instance, that on a yearly basis, you have to provide accountings to the beneficiaries. They might not know how to put those accountings together. So you do have the option as a trustee to seek a professional. You can go to an attorney and have this worked with them so they can distribute the assets and walk the trustee through the process. If it's a larger trust, that's where you consider someone like a professional fiduciary who can do that role of an attorney on a long forward basis, really keeping in mind what eligibility or programs are available to the beneficiary and keeping them intact while following the rules of the trust.
I hate to put you on the spot, but that's what we're here for. We want to show people how this works. If you could give me an example maybe of a time when you came across a case where somebody was out of their league. They were appointed, they thought they were able to manage it, and they either brought in help or you were able to help them work through a difficult situation.
It's a great question. We actually have one of these matters now. We're trying to find a right professional fiduciary. And so depending on what the role is or what you're considering this fiduciary for, you would explore different questions and different needs. But in this instance, it was a conservatorship. So you can have a professional fiduciary, whether it's a trustee or a bank or a private fiduciary. You have them in your trust, but you can also have them in other places like a conservatorship. When you have someone who has larger needs in conservatorship, they're a danger to themselves, they're a danger to others. You need to find a person who can provide the requisite or adequate level of care. In this instance, I had a client who had a son, very combative. It's hard to keep them apart. They want to stay together, but at the same time, the son has his own issues. And so it's about finding a trustee who can navigate those issues, who can face with the beneficiary or the principal and understand what level of care they need to provide on an ongoing basis. So finding the right trustee or professional fiduciary is sometimes a task in and of itself. You want to find a person who can handle the day-to-day, who knows the area where this person is living, who knows the programs available to them. One of the considerations in the instance we just spoke about was looking for someone who perhaps had military experience or who had security experience, because the son is a little bit bigger and does need to be physically restrained from his mother. So that's where you have trustees who do have characteristics or benefits that they can provide services over others. They might be more adequate or able to stand in and provide that level of barrier or that separation that's needed because they have that physical pedigree, which is what you're looking for. So you can certainly explore fiduciaries, and you want to find the right fit for your trust.
So I know for me, just thinking about all those things that you said, it feels overwhelming to identify them and actually consider all the possibilities. I don't know what questions to ask. Do you sit down with your clients and actually help them discover the people in their life or the professionals that might be able to help them?
Very much so. So here at Stonewood, we like to take that personal approach. We spend the time with the client. It's a courtesy, of course, understanding their construct, who's needed, and who might be the best person to either work with them or work in lieu of them. And that's a big discussion. So understanding, again, what those needs are. Is there a physical barrier or separation that needs to be considered? Is there someone who you need that can access the best medical facilities in the city? All professional fiduciaries have pros and cons. They have different characteristics, and you want to find someone that is the right fit. And sometimes it's a bank. You just want a big corporate trustee who's able to stand in there and neutrally abide by the trust, distribute it per its terms. Or you want someone who's more close to home, who you can pick up the phone, call, have a relationship with, and see on a weekly basis.
I want to wrap this up with a final instruction maybe for our client, or final tip for someone reviewing their estate plan now. What's a practical way for them to assess whether they have the right fiduciary in place that they've named before they need them?
So I think a lot of this question comes down to trust. If you have a family member who you believe is adequate in the role that they're considered for, because there are multiple places you can consider this professional fiduciary, again, a conservatorship, a trust, but there are these places that you assess them on different levels and different needs. So taking a look at your trust, seeing who the beneficiary is, seeing what their needs are, how they need to be cared for. Is that on a weekly basis? Is that personal care? Is that just weekly check-ins? But also take a look at the estate. Is this large enough that it perhaps requires someone to objectively and neutrally distribute the assets? Perhaps a family member would be too close to home and not objective. So there are these various conversations you can have with your attorney when structuring the trust. Considering who the trustee is a huge consideration for the principal, the settlor, the trustor, because this is who's going to run things when they're gone. They want to ensure that that person is going to faithfully execute their duties. And to do that, you can find the right person who will do that on your behalf. And if not, they have these options, professional fiduciaries. You can consider either working in tandem with the trustee or in lieu of that trustee.
Thank you, Adam. For folks who have not looked at their trusts or the people that are helping them to implement them, this would be great advice to get them started to review. And trusts change, the information changes, the documents change as we grow over the years. So take that first step and maybe schedule an appointment to come see Adam. And thanks for listening to Protecting Your Legacy with Estate Planning with Stonewood Law Group. If you'd like help choosing a fiduciary or reviewing an estate plan, please visit stonewoodlaw.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and definitely share this episode with a friend who may need it. See you next week.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.